All right, it's the end of the session. I'm here with little Tucker, and right over here we have Timmy, and this is their roadmap to success. So basically, first thing we went over was we talked about their backstory, and again, having two dogs from the same litter can be problematic. I'm a little bit concerned about their genetics. The dogs were raised outside. They were raised in a barn. They're from Kansas, which there are a lot of, doesn't mean you can't get a good dog from Kansas, but there are a lot of puppy mills in the Midwest. Puppies who mother is stressed while she's pregnant can change the DNA of the puppies, make them more anxious. Jack Russells, Rat Terriers, Chihuahuas, a lot of little dogs like this are kind of lower on the food chain, so a lot of times they're twitchy. But I definitely see significant signs of cortisol, the stress hormone in their blood. And most of the fights seem to have happened when they're overexcited. So one of the key things I talked about was exercising the dogs multiple times a day, getting mental exercise, mental stimulation, and physical exercise about every 2 hours or so. Also, after there are any fights, I want the guardians to separate them, do what you have to do. Hopefully the video above helps you prevent them happening. But if a fight does happen, separate them, make sure everybody's okay, and then immediately sit down and write down the date, the time, where the fight was, what was going on right before the fight, who was the instigator, who got the worst of it, and then also how long has it been since they got exercise? Were there a bunch of kids walking by? We want to try to see if we can identify what the triggers are and the things that cause these fights. If we can find out what those are and they're consistent, and we can set up a management situation where we eliminate the dog's access to those things, we might be able to manage a lot of these fights and prevent a lot of them from happening. I think exercising the dogs is going to be really, really important. And so I talked about different forms of exercise, letting them sniff. The dogs are not really walked because they don't behave very well in a walk. I'd like to see the dogs walked, each dog once a day. Even if it's like only an 8-minute walk, 4 minutes away, 4 minutes back. Yes, you're gonna scratch your eyes. I can scratch for you. Remember, dogs burn more energy on a walk by sniffing than from walking, so let them sniff a lot. If they don't sniff, do they sniff on walks? I know you don't walk very much. Look how high his nose was. Yes. They do sniff a lot on walks. Great. Well, let them, as long as it's safe to do so. And then, so if I go to an 8-minute walk, I'm gonna walk that way for 4 minutes. When my buzzer goes off, I cross the street and I walk back for another 4 minutes. That's 8 minutes of walking. We got the dog out of the house. You got to have a little personal time with you. It's a change of environment. It burns some energy. It builds some confidence and some social skills. There's a lot of benefits from that. So even if it's only like a 4-minute walk, 2 minutes away, 2 minutes back, I would like to see more than that. But make sure that they're getting one walk each day, each one of them. And letting them sniff as much as they want. Playing tug of war is a great way to burn energy. Just don't let the energy go get above level 5. If they get too excited for it, hold the treat to their nose. And when they drop it, say yes and put the treat in their mouth. The guardians have taken things away from the dogs, and I think that that's created a situation where they don't want to drop on fetch. Also, they're worried about the other dog getting it. So a lot of times what I do is the dog has a bone in its mouth, I pull out a tricky trainer or a high-value treat, go over and touch it. As soon as they drop it, I say the marker word, and I pop the treat in their mouth. And I'd like Jacob, if he comes back, if he comes over to work on the leave it cue, we can go over and leave it and drop. But leave it or drop is basically when they have an item that they're allowed to have, quietly pull out a treat, walk over, hold it against the dog's nose. As soon as they drop it, say your marker word, pop the treat in their mouth, and don't touch the item. You didn't want the item, it's their toy. But if you can teach them and help them practice dropping low value items, it makes it easier to drop higher value items. And I was able to get both of them to drop a bully stick. For that case, I got him to drop it, I gave him a treat, and then while it's on the ground, so they didn't see me pick it up, I threw another treat there, the dog walked away, then I picked up the treat. Usually, technically, I'm going to do that. I should trade, and I should give them something equal or greater value. We were doing that because I didn't want them to get in fights together. And I would definitely not recommend giving them bully sticks together. One thing, a little trick that you could do is for bully sticks, they come in different lengths. You can get one 6 inches, 12 inches. I get a bag of 6-inch ones and drill holes in the back of one of them and take zip ties and zip tie one of them over there, one of them over here. So I can't take this one and go and try to intimidate you. I can only chew on this one over here, and we take away their ability to fight each other for them because they can't even see each other from doing that. So exercising them, other forms of exercise would be playing fetch. They like to play fetch. Letting them play around together is fine. Just make sure you give them treat outs anytime the energy level gets above 50%. There's also mental exercise. We went over cookie in the corner. That's when I say search and throw 1 treat, then work up to 5 treats. So as you throw it, you say search, and then you say yes every time they look it up. That is unusual. Normally, we do not say the marker word when the dog gets a treat, but in this case, getting the treat is the action we're looking for, so we're marking that action. Eventually, when we've done that enough, we should be able to say search and just point into a room that we've already put treats on the ground, and the dog goes sniffs the ground looking for those treats, and we mark each time they look it up. That's a great way to burn energy and give them something to do. We also went over other forms of exercise. Training dogs is a great way to burn energy. For training dogs, you want to train dogs in little 2 to 3 minute training sessions. You should always end on a positive. Make sure you're not frustrated, the dog's not frustrated. Otherwise, they won't want to do it the next time. Practice with a lot of variety. Standing, sitting, lay down, looking this way, looking that way, doing it in different rooms. Those are all equally important. Yes. And teaching dogs new tricks and cues is a nice way to boost some self-esteem and confidence, and that can help have a positive impact and reduce some of the fighting that we're experiencing. We also went over the using marker words. The dogs, like I said, don't know any cues, so we went over introducing the marker word. If you forget how to do that, let me know. I have a video for that. Make sure you are saying yes every time the dog's butt hits the ground. They look at you, they sit, they lay down, they come to you. They go to the dog bed, they go into their kennel, they drink water, they poop, they eat their food. Anything that's a desirable behavior, make sure you use the marker word to let them know that they want to do it. Remember, the marker is said the instant the dog's butt hits the ground if it's a sit, or the instant the action happens, unless the action has duration. Like if I asked the dog to stay for 5 seconds, I would say stay, count to 5, and then I would say the marker word at the end of that. If the dog is pottying, I would say the marker word at the conclusion of pottying, letting the dog know that that's what I want is complete elimination in the yard. And before I leave, by the time you see this, you should have already done this. So tonight, go switch. So you have the marker word and you have the clicker. Walk around, click, and then within 2 seconds, give your puppy that treat. Remember, they don't have to do anything other than take it. We also went over hand targeting. I have a video on that one, so make sure you practice that one. And remember, make sure you're chopping on either side of their face and gradually get further and further away. Make sure you keep that hand cocked, and as soon as the dog looks at you, then you chop your hand. And then it'll go come over and touch his nose. And if it doesn't, then pull back and chop closer. Make sure it's a good definitive movement like that, and say your marker word when they touch your hand. We also went over Cookie in the Corner. That is an introduction to scent games. Google scent games. There's a lot of scent games out there that you can use that'll be nice ways to burn some energy and get them doing it in different rooms of the house. I also, right now they're free fed. You can see he's a lot smaller than his brother Tim. And so I think it's genetic a little bit, but I think that Tim's probably eating and guarding the food a little bit from what I've seen. I haven't seen it, but I would imagine that's the case. So I'd like the Guardians to go to more of a structured feeding where we feed twice a day to feed the dogs separately. And I'd like the Guardians to feed out of a snuffle mat because that's a nice way to get some extra exercise. We also went over, there's treat dispensing toys and puzzles. He likes the puzzles, right? Or no, it's actually Tim. So, but even the snuffle mat's really easy, but Kong's filled with peanut butter. There's all sorts of different toys. There's a lot of balls that have a hole, and Omega Paw treat ball is the one that I like. But get a whole bunch of those, make sure they don't have them together. But that's a problem-solving activity. It's a nice way for them to burn some energy as well. Remember, licking and chewing release endorphins, so giving them bully sticks that are on other sides of the room, or lick mats like I talked about in one of the videos above, is a great way to build some positive associations. The idea is to come up with a routine where we're maybe getting them some exercise, and then a couple hours later mental stimulation, then a couple hours later some physical exercise, and back and forth, and try out the number of repetitions, as well as this is not comfortable for you. Let me help you out. The number of repetitions is going to, different activities might need different amounts. So like before the kids come home from school, we might need a certain amount of exercise. Before we have a house full of guests for dinner party, they might need a different amount of exercise. Remember, you can exercise your dog before a walk to set them up for success, or for other activities. If the baby, or if your daughter is going to have a snack, exercise the dogs first, give them 10 minutes rest, then have them have the snack and practice going to the dog beds or whatever the case may be. Let me see, we also went over petting with a purpose and passive training. Petting with a purpose is if you would like to pet the dog, or the dog is pawing at you, nudging you, barking at you for attention, you're going to tell the dog to sit or lay down. If it sits or lays down within 2 seconds the first time you ask it, then you say your marker word and pet under the chin, on the chest, or on either shoulder, and pet as much or as little as you want. If the dog does not sit, you just go on back to doing what you're doing. Playing hard to get works great for dog training. Don't punish the dog. Oh, you'd be getting petted if you were to only sat down. No. We just, hey, okay. And I'm just on to my next thing. There's no punishment, but the dog is losing out on that interaction. Yes, even as cute as you are. And then that makes me more motivated to want to do it again in the future. Use the watchword of paycheck if you suspect someone's petting without a purpose for about 3 months. After 3 months, you can pet your dog at different times for, just because the dog is cute. But these guardians, I think, are petting the dogs at a lot of times when they're doing things we don't want them to do. And I think in ways that are mindless at times where the dogs are getting confused about what they're getting petted for. So if we ask them to sit or lay down and think of it saying please or thank you, they sit and say, please pet me, and we pet them. That's treating good boundaries. We also went over celebrating, which is rewarding the dogs when they do the things on their own. So looks, eye contact, sits, downs, all the stuff I talked about earlier. So every time you see one of the dog does something you like, say your marker word and go over and pet them. petting, the nice thing about petting, shouldn't create a fight between the two of them because it's not a resource. It can be something they guard, but usually dogs are going to be less likely to guard that than they would be if it's an actual bully stick or a treat. We also went over the importance of rules and structure. The dogs have no rules, and so they don't have any practice of self-restraint, which is part of the reason why they get in these fights. So not being allowed in the kitchen when we're preparing food, not being allowed the children when they're eating food or when we're eating food at the dinner table are a couple examples of some rules. We also went over Premax. He's like, yes, I know where the treats are. Premax, remember, a less desirable behavior earns me a more desirable behavior. So go to the door. The dogs are outside. You say, sit. If he sits and he doesn't sit, I'd open the door and let him in and not let Tim in. And then I close the door and I sit down so Tim can see me, and I just ignore Tim for 1 minute. After 1 minute, I go back to the door and I open a crack and say, sit. If he doesn't sit, I walk within 2 seconds. I just walk away and sit down this time for 2 minutes. Next time I sit down for 4 minutes and 8 minutes. Make sure you're seated. And then just read a magazine or do something else. And eventually, as soon as he sits down, when you tell him, you open that door, provided the dog knows how to do this. So the dogs here, I don't know if they are actually know how to sit on cue. I think they know how to sit from the lure for emotion. That's why it's so important for you guys to say that marker word. And then if you can anticipate the sit, sneak it in like I mentioned. Let me see. There's probably a whole bunch of other stuff that I haven't gone in here. Is there anything else you want me to highlight? I think I've gotten most of the brass tacks. So what I like you to do is watch this video and watch the videos above. And look, but the thing to make sure you guys are watching out for is that is him sharking him and his indicator. His ears go back like they just were. That's your indicator. Even if he looks like he's comfortable, probably something going on. So do some hand targeting and practice that hand targeting a lot so that when you say hand target, and each dog has a different designation. So one says, we say target, one says boop. So you can guys go in other directions and say those words and they go away from each other. If you do see them split apart from each other, that'd be something to celebrate as well. Say your marker word yes when they walk away. If you see that Tim comes over and licks him and does something tender and nice, I would mark that and pet him as well. Let's reward the positive things that we like and give the dog motivation to want to do those things. Like I said, I'd like to have Jacob come back and work on this, the relaxation protocol and some basic cues and commands. But if you have any other questions or problems, please text me. If I don't hear from you, I assume everything's going great. So let me know if you have any questions. Well, this is my little buddy Tucker. Yes. Is that not very comfortable for you? No. He's like, but this is my roadmap to success. Remember, everything you do trains your dog. Only sometimes you mean it.